This week on Behavior Bites, we're going to be talking about an essential question in behavioral intervention. And that is, in any given situation when I'm looking at a student's behavior challenge, is this something that I can just remove the trigger for the behavior, or is it something that I'm going to need to teach that student a skill to deal with the trigger? And this is one of the essential questions that we deal with in behavior planning, because the reality is that many times a student who has a need for behavioral support is coming to us with multiple behavior issues, and sometimes very complex behavior issues. And the reality is, whenever any of us are trying to deal with a challenge behaviorally or emotionally, we can't tackle everything at once. Maybe we have multiple things that are on our plate at any given time, and we really can't manage to change all of them at one time. And so the same is true for our students with behavior issues. We can't address every behavior at the same time. And so I think to an example of something that might be a trigger for an adult. Let's say that you have, at the church that you go to, the person that always sits next to you is a gossip, a terrible gossip, very judgmental and says unkind things about people that you know, and really wants to engage in a lot of gossip that you find very offensive and irritating, and it's a trigger for you. It makes your heart rate go up, it makes your blood pressure go up, it ruins your day. And so you have the choice at that point to decide, I'm either going to teach myself some self-management skills or how to interact in that situation. I'm going to have to do some thinking about how to respond in that situation. Or you can decide, I am going to sit somewhere else in church. I'm going to get there early, or I'm going to get there a little later and choose a seat away from that person. That would be a choice between building your skills to deal with that situation or just avoiding the situation entirely. Now, when might that decision be a little more difficult? It might be a little more difficult if that person that's a gossip and that triggers you and that is rude or says offensive things is your boss. That would be a situation where not as easy to remove that trigger, so you're going to have to learn how to deal with that situation. You're going to have to develop a plan for how to deal with that situation. It's different if it's the neighbor down the street that you can kind of avoid talking to when you're out on a walk by walking across on the other side of the street. That's different than if it's your mother-in-law, right? So there are similar kinds of situations to look at in behavioral planning, because for some students in a particular situation, the easiest situation might be just to remove the trigger entirely. At other times, it's not a trigger that's reasonable to remove because it is essential to their functioning in an environment, or it is going to be something that they encounter in life over and over again. You're going to have to make that call. Now, so an example might be that you have a student who is triggered by interactions in crowded hallways. It's unstructured time. They are getting jostled. It's crowded. It's noisy. There's a lot of social interactions, opportunities for being bullied. There's a lot of facets to the crowded situation that cause the student to escalate and sometimes strike out at people, swear, kind of have epic proportion meltdowns in the hallway. And so the team may come together and decide, is that a situation where we are best to remove the trigger by having him avoid the crowded hallways, or is it a situation where we need to teach the student a set of skills to deal with that situation? Well, all of us would sit there and say, well, gosh, there's going to be crowded circumstances all through life, right? And that is so true. So yeah, we probably do need to teach that student some self-management skills for dealing with that unstructured, crowded setting where there are a lot of uncontrolled social interactions. However, are there times when it might be best to remove that trigger, at least temporarily? So some examples might be when the student has that as a challenge, but also has numerous other challenges that are more pressing, more dangerous, more potentially explosive, and we can't expect him to learn everything at once. Are there maybe other behaviors that take priority because at this time they're dangerous to the learner or to another person? You might need to, or, is it a situation where, yes, he's going to need to learn to deal with that situation, but until then, we need to remove the trigger while we build up his skills. So in that situation, you might decide to have that student just not transition at the same time as everyone else. Have them transition between classes 5 minutes before everyone else, or wait until 5 minutes after the bell rings and just be allowed to be a few minutes late to class. That is an easy way to remove a trigger while you address more pressing behavioral concerns or while you teach the skills to deal with that trigger. And so I would encourage that over the next week or so, as you reflect on a student that maybe has multiple behavioral challenges, or you feel like they are missing skills to deal with a situation that you need time to work on or teach or build up, that you consider removing the trigger, if at all possible. And again, that's not necessarily forever, but it might be while you address more pressing issues or while you teach the skills needed for that situation. So hopefully you have some conversation this week about that, and it gives you a little needed different perspective on the situation that can help you move forward. Thanks, and have a great day.